And welcome back, everybody, to the channel. It is the most earth-breaking, ground-shaking, but never media show, money-taking, the man, the myth, the legend, the most electrifying villain in all of YouTube entertainment today. Today, I am doing my top movies, or the best, or worst to best, of June. I saw 11 movies, so I will be doing a breakdown of those movies because I haven't done very many reviews, been busy. So I'm going to kind of give a brief review, tell you why the movie is where it is, and give a little bit of my thoughts on the film. These aren't going to be like full out reviews, but if there's a particular movie you're interested in or anything else like that, let me know in the comments. I can elaborate more. These are just a couple of brief thoughts, why they are where they are on my list, things like that. So getting started right away with my number 11, which is probably going to be the hottest take. And now keep in mind, there's about 3 films on here until I get to maybe 7 where I just didn't think they were great, and some I absolutely loathed, which is the bottom 2. And unfortunately, at my very bottom for movies, the movie I did not care for, and this is probably going to be a hot take. A lot of people are going to, there's been such bad discourse on this movie, which is why I waited. But for my number 11, I have the movie Scary Movie. This was fucking atrocious, at least to me. So let me preface this. I've seen every single Scary Movie, even the shitty 4 and 5. 4 was okay. 5 was absolute fucking trash. I think they went up to 5. Whatever the last one was before this one. So I was excited hearing that the Wayans brothers were going to take control. They were going to offend everyone. This movie is not for your mom and pop. If you're easily offended, fucking batten down the hatches. We're going for it. And the thing is, this movie is not that at all. To me, especially, and I've talked about this a little bit when I did my Naked Gun review, comedy has been a dead genre because people get fucking offended about everything. And so in this modern age, it is extremely difficult to do these spoof comedy movies that take shots at everything because you're going to inevitably have somebody who gets pissed off, or a certain loud section of the internet that is going to say something's woke, blah, 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 or it's not woke, or, I mean, either side of the argument has just been fucking exhausting, which doesn't speak to the film quality. Now, I want to put something in perspective. If something is quote unquote woke, and I'll get to one of my top movies, which I could see being controversial, is what they're saying, especially in comedy, relevant and funny to that particular genre. For me, Scary Movie was always good because Scary Movie targeted everybody, and the jokes and the punchlines were hilarious. And Scary Movie felt like a movie that tells a joke without a punchline, or shows a sight gag that's just a gag. And what I mean by that is that in comedy, you have the joke and then you have the punchline. This movie felt like a movie that told a lot of jokes with very few of them having any punchlines to it. And for me, that's just not funny. There were 2 or 3 scenes in this that did get me to chuckle, but overall, I just found it highly disappointing. Now, a lot of people like this, and if you like this movie, that's great. For me, I felt like this is one of the biggest fucking letdowns of this year. Now, I wouldn't say this would be in my worst movies of this year, but if I did something like disappointing films, this would be probably my number 1. This is the most disappointing movie I think I've seen so far this year, besides the next one I'll talk about. Being a DC fan has been a fucking trial. But this was a movie that I thought for sure would come out and kind of do something really unique. And unfortunately, it did not. So my number 11 was Scary Movie. I thought it was not that great. I can see why people like it, but just for me, the jokes and what they claimed they were going to do, they just didn't do. There was nothing truly offensive in this. There was a lot of cheap and easy shots. And I don't care what anybody says. Spoof movies do have an art to them. There is plots in spoof movies, no matter how thin, and it pisses me off because the common defense I hear about this movie are, well, it's a spoof movie. It's not designed to have a story or a plot. It just makes fun of other things. And that's not true. The other day I was watching Naked Gun and I realized like that movie is outlandish. The plot in that movie is fucking outlandish. But in a weird way, in the world, everything makes sense. Where Scary Movie to me felt like just scenes that are happening, jokes that are thrown at you, but there's no oomph to them. There's nothing that makes me laugh. And unfortunately, that's just how I feel about it. Comedy is subjective. I hear that a lot too. But we can objectively say when things are universally funny to people. And even just looking at other people's reviews or seeing what other people said about the movie, because I'm like, maybe it's just me. This movie seems to be a heavy split. And this kind of reminds me of another movie I talked about. I think it was last year, fucking Happy Gilmore 2, where a lot of people defended that movie. And I thought it was a pile of shit. I thought it disrespected the original and the legacy that it set up. I thought it was not funny and it was more mean than it was deprecating, which the original has a mean spirit to it, but it has a self-deprecation type of humor. So Scary Movie, was not a big fan. That's my number 11. Number 10, and this is the toughest one for me to talk about, Supergirl. Holy shit. Supergirl is a mixture of just okay. That's what this movie is. And it pisses me off because I was not a fan of Superman. And I know I'm on a fucking island. I got a lot of comments about that. I just particularly didn't like it. So coming into this, I did not have the highest of expectations. But what really is interesting about this is that in this movie, despite what anybody says, there is a few glimpses of a good movie in the whole entire movie. There's like chunks of it that would be great. But unfortunately, it's very much a James Gunn movie, like trying to be a James Gunn movie without being made by James Gunn. So the fucking music in this and where they place the music is fucking atrocious. This movie, especially the ending, is ruined by the fucking song. And I'm not going to say what it is if you haven't seen the movie, but just look it up. Like the end battle scene, which is supposed to be the big highlight battle scene of this movie, gets fucking demolished by the song choice. And this is where James Gunn is good, where these other directors can't copy him, is that he knows where to place his musical stings and needle drops. And that's very tough to do because music can destroy a scene or it can make it awesome. Sounds and audio landscape is super important to a film. And unfortunately, when you have a movie where the battles are very muted, there's a particular scene that fucking frustrated me where I kind of knew I wasn't going to like this movie, where Supergirl is fighting. And instead of showing us this battle, they highlight this one character. I forgot the character's name because she was so fucking annoying. But you just see people flying in the background, like all over the place. And it's kind of shot from her perspective. She's knelt down behind a table, taking cover while Supergirl's fucking these people up. And here's the thing. The whole controversy with Millie Elcott, like if I didn't see a movie based on what stupid fucking celebrity said, I would watch nothing. That stuff didn't bother me. What does bother me is that this is the second movie in the DC lineup where I was just not satisfied. I like Creature Commandos. I liked the first season of Peacemaker. I thought the second season was garbage. And so, I mean, the ending really destroyed the second season. For the most part, the first half of the second season was good, and then it just went down the fucking hill. And that's been really the struggle with DC. I think I am still looking forward to Clayface, but as far as like the main line, like I'm not really excited for Man of Tomorrow and all the other ones, which is a shame because The name of my channel is General Zod's Fandom Zone. I'm a huge DC fan. I've been a huge fan since I was a kid. I've always liked DC more than Marvel, in certain aspects. But for me, DC has been missing with everything but like the Matt Reeves Batman verse. Like the best part of this movie is, and a lot of people have said this, but it really doesn't fit in the movie, is Jason Momoa as Lobo. Fucking great. Honestly, it's just like Jason Momoa, but he painted his face and's got a bike. Pretty much, it's a character he was made to play. So he is fantastic in the movie, but he's not in it for long enough to save this film. The bad guy in this movie, I think his name is Craig or something. The bad guy in this movie is fucking atrocious. One of the worst villains I think I've seen in a movie in quite some time. It's very much like cheap with they shoot the dog, which I fucking hated the dog and was hoping that it would die. Go see my like random clip on that. I hate the fucking dog. So when it got shot and taken off the board in the beginning of the movie, I was like, oh, okay, cool. The problem is the humor still undercuts the serious moments. Supergirl as a character is very confusing and uninteresting. I don't blame Millie Elcott. I think that she does a great job with the material she's given. Unfortunately, just the material is very bland. This movie's just bland. I think the worst part about this movie is how average the movie is. It's not offensive enough for me to be pissed off, but it's not good enough to even make it in my good. By the way, my ranking, I'll give my ratings for each one. I almost forgot. So for my number 11 scary movie, I'm going to give that a 5. For this movie, I'm going to give this movie a 6. I find this very just average, or slightly above average, I guess. It's above a 5, and it is definitely above scary movie for me because I was not having a lot of faith in the movie to begin with. But honestly, it was just disappointing. Speaking of disappointment, my number 9, Disclosure Day. So, full disclosure, I am a huge Steven Spielberg fan. I have seen every single movie, even West Side Story, which to this day remains probably, in my opinion, one of the worst Steven Spielberg movies that he's done. But all in all, pretty much most of Spielberg's filmography, I've loved every single thing Steven Spielberg has done. With that said, Disclosure Day was a very anticipated movie for me. I was very much looking forward to seeing this movie. And the issue with Disclosure Day, which I think a lot of people have sort of hinted at, is that Disclosure Day feels like a movie that is very much out of time. And what I mean by that is this feels like a movie that should have came out in the early 2000s or in the 90s. This movie is very weird in its structure. It's very much it's pretty much like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I think if you took that movie and you made it today, I don't know how well it would play given the history, even by Spielberg himself, of all of these directors who have made these great kind of alien movies. And Disclosure Day presents itself as exposing the truth and seeing a bunch of new things and bringing out the stuff. But the thing is, especially with the sci-fi genre and extraterrestrials and the way Spielberg tells these stories, this just feels like he's done this story, but better, years prior. And honestly, there's some people who are just downright fucking terrible in this movie. And I don't know if it's the actor or the material or just the way they were directed. I can't quite put my finger on it. But basically, the point of this movie is that they have to, this dude has these secrets and he has to release it. Meanwhile, Colin Firth plays this shady government guy who's is connected with the aliens. Like I said, I'm trying not to give away spoilers during these reviews. And this kind of all starts with Emily Blunt and her character. Now, I want to say Emily Blunt in this movie is absolutely terrific. And Coleman Domingo, who's been one of my favorite actors, I saw him on the Walking Dead spinoff, and I figured he had a lot of chops. And Coleman Domingo is just fantastic in this movie. Emily Blunt is giving quite possibly one of the best performances that she's done. And she's done a lot of movies, but in her career, this might be like she carries this movie pretty much on her back. But for the most part, I found this movie very boring. There's like one huge action scene in this film that is really good. And the CGI. The CGI is fucking atrocious. There's a scene with the aliens communicating and they use like these animals or whatnot. And the CGI just looks uncanny valley. It is really fucking jarring. It's one of the most cartoonish looking versions of CGI I've seen in quite some time. I don't know who was in charge or, and the funny part is the action scenes, and especially the big like set piece of this movie is really well done. Great shot. I'm imagining some of it was CGI, and it's great. But then the fucking deer and the forest animals, it's in the preview, the scene where all the animals gather in her room or whatever, just look fucking atrocious. Really weird movie. This movie for me is a 6. I just thought once again, much like Supergirl, for me it was an aggressively average movie, and it's way too fucking long. This movie, I felt the time. Spielberg, especially towards his later years, started doing a lot of 2-hour, 3-hour movies, and I really hate this. Like, and I've had this argument a ton of times where people think that a longer movie is necessary because of how expensive the theaters is. And I kind of get the argument. My issue is that longer does not mean better. That means that when you go from a movie that's an hour and 45 minutes, or hell, I could even do like 2 hours, it's very exhausting, especially watching as many movies as I do, to sit there through all of these fucking movies that are so long and try to watch them all. Especially with movies like Supergirl or Disclosure Day or Scary Movie, where they're just average. And if Scary Movie had one positive, is that it's in that hour and 40 minutes, that kind of time frame, where this movie is just way too long. A lot of shit could have been cut, maybe some shit added, and the ending really pissed me off. The ending of this movie is the last thing that really knocked down the score for me, because if you've seen the movie, you know they're building up to something, and as they get to what the something is and the ramifications, the movie just ends. And that pissed me off because it's literally the whole point of the movie. The name of the movie is Disclosure Day. The disclosure, spoilers, does not happen. It does, but then we don't see how this impacts it. The other issue I had with this movie is they talk about the state of the world. We're heading into like World War III, all of this, but it's all background noise. And when these characters are out in the world and things like that, you don't see like this effect that society is having and why it's important that they release this secret, because releasing it just seems like more people would lose their shit. So, I mean, conceptually, it doesn't make sense. So I was not a huge fan. And the last movie I think is average, but I just put it here on my list to kind of round it out. I was curious, and I didn't visit my peeps at the Peacock, so I saw the Peacock original film, Strong. What a fucking interesting, eclectic apocalyptic kind of movie. So this movie was directed by Malcolm D. Lee, written by Alan B. McElroy. It stars Chloe Belly, Lynn Whitfield, and Lucian Lives Count. God, I think I butchered that. But basically, Strung is a psychological thriller about a woman who teaches violin. She goes to this upscale, sort of elite family, and weird shit ensues. And it's kind of like a psychological thriller. This had a lot of writers on it. The highlight of this for me was Jason Blum, and his company produced it. But Blum also wrote the script along with Tyler Perry and a couple of other big named writers, which I didn't know going into this. And once again, this movie was just fine. To me, it didn't do anything really new. It didn't say anything really new. You have the old tried and true that there's this person. Hey, what's up? Good to see you, Jay. But this movie didn't do anything particularly new. It was just like the old, there's an elitist family, there's somebody who's going to teach this family violin. One of the people, the little girl or whoever, has this fucked up mask that she wears. And it has an intriguing premise, but when you get down to what the movie is about and what's going on, it's okay. So Strung is my number 8. I'm going to give it a 6.5. I thought it was better than Disclosure Day, Supergirl, and Scary Movie. But once again, it's a very aggressively average movie. It was fine. It was on Peacock. I didn't really waste any money. But it was just fine. So, number 7. Now, these movies from 7 on are movies that I actually thoroughly enjoyed. The reason why they're placed the way they are is obviously I enjoyed certain movies better, but their ratings and stuff is going to be way higher, and my enjoyment is way more. And so I finally got to check out a movie that's kind of a guilty pleasure, but I love Hugh Jackman, and The Sheep Detective I thought was fucking hilarious. You can check this out on Amazon now. And it is a very cute movie. This movie doesn't do anything particularly new for that genre. You have your talking animals. Something happens to the sheep herder played by Hugh Jackman, and these sheep have to discover what happened to their owner, and wacky shenanigans ensue. One of the sheep is like Sherlock Holmes. It's just a very fun movie, and I watched this movie when I was having a particularly rough day watching things, and I just found it thoroughly entertaining. It's just a great, wholesome little film. It reminds me of the days where you got these Disney movies or stuff that would come out, and they're just family fun. I mean, it's not the deepest plot. There's nothing new that the movie's doing that you haven't seen Babe or any of the talking animal movies do. It's just really hilarious. And Hugh Jackman is so fucking versed. He'll be much higher on my list later for another movie he just made. But it's just, he's so fun in this role, and the setting is so great. The CGI is a little wonky. Some of the jokes don't land. It's a movie with a lot of jokes. Some of them are hit or miss, but I had a good time. I'm going to give The Sheep Detective a 7 out of 10. Definitely a fun little movie. If you have an afternoon or kids or anything else like that, I definitely recommend this movie. It's sad I haven't seen Toy Story 5, so it won't be on this list, but I'm sure, like, with all the stuff coming out, it's been tough for movies competing with each other. But this movie surprised me. So, number 6. And this movie, it hurts my heart that I don't think this movie is going to do very well. But Masters of the Universe. Oh my God. I went into this movie not expecting much from a He-Man live action. The last He-Man movie we got was with Dolph Lundgren, and it was not very good. I mean, it's nostalgic, and I think people are nostalgic about how good the Masters of the Universe movie is, but it's not that great. It's just watching it when I was a kid and growing up with it, I can admit the movie is okay. So coming into this one, I just wanted it to be a fun, fantastical, like I remember when I was a kid. And that's exactly what this movie is. The premise is great. So you have He-Man, and this movie takes place where He-Man beats Skeletor or whatever, and then Skeletor comes back, and he gets sent to Earth, and then it does a time jump, and he's an adult. And the great part about this movie is this isn't a story about him discovering that he's He-Man and all of this stuff, but it's a movie about him trying to get back to his place. Like, he knows the world of Eternia exists. He knows about all of his friends that are there, but because of what happened to him as a kid, he can't get back. And it's assumed, which I'm not going to spoil anything, but needless to say, Skeletor has won. So it's a very different Eternia. And so this was such a surprise at not only how funny this movie is, but how exceedingly violent, and the humor is very adult. Like, there's a lot of jokes in here I did not expect, because it does have a feel like it's targeting a family demographic, but there's a lot of jokes that are like super fucking crude, and I have no clue how they got away with them. There's this guy, what's his name? Destructo or Hammerfist or something. And every time he's on screen, they make a joke about fisting. It was fucking hilarious. I'm sitting here going, holy shit. Like, I can't believe they did that. But there's a lot of different characters in here. And I can't believe when I say this. I've always had a special spot for Jared Leto. I've always treasured Morbius, made him more billion. Love that movie, even though it's terrible. There's something about when he takes a role on, you never quite know what the performance is going to be. But I'm just going to say it. A, if you looked at Skeletor, you'd have no clue that was Jared Leto. And B, he fucking nails Skeletor to a T. This feels like a role he should have been in originally before Morbius and stuff. It was like looking for these particular characters, and he fits Skeletor to a T. He's even got the cackle. And I found it very just lighthearted, good fun. Now, my issues with this is the jokes do undercut some of the tone of the movie. And it feels like they're set up for a movie we might not get. There's a couple of things that happen in the film that clearly set up for a sequel. And I think it's a shame, because I think if this movie didn't release where it did, we would see a bigger box office. But unfortunately, it's just going to fall under the cracks because Backrooms and Obsession fucking destroyed the box office. So Masters of the Universe is my number 6, and I'm going to give it a 7. I really enjoyed it. I think it is way above average. It just gets held back for me because the movies that I saw above this list were leagues better. But also, too, the movie was kind of all over the place. I hope if they do make a sequel, they kind of balance the comedy with the action and stuff just slightly better. It's not Marvel annoying with quips and things like that, but there is still scenes and things where, especially with Skeletor, where instead of making him very menacing, which I get in the original, it's kind of corny when you watch it now, but he's supposed to be this like evil dude who has this immense power. But sometimes, like, especially there's a couple of scenes where he's talking to his minions and it kind of devolves into a joke. And I would like to see a little bit more seriousness, because besides being comical, Skeletor is also evil and does heinous shit. So it would be nice to have a bit of a darker edge on the character. But other than that, the actors did great. The movie was solid. I had a fun time. Number five, my number five for this, and now we're in my top five, and these are all going to be highly rated because uh, this for me is the best of the best on my list. My number five is a movie called Power Ballad, and Power Ballad is led by Paul Rudd. And Power Ballad was an interesting film because I saw the preview for it. I was like, oh, I gotta check that out. I kind of forgot about it, and then I was bored one day, so I went to see the film. And holy fucking shit! Like, look, I hate movies that seem like a Oscar baity kind of film because a lot of what they do, you could see it's specifically made to get awards. But Power Ballad is interesting because I've always been fascinated with music, and the premise of this is very, very intriguing. So, Power Ballad stars Paul Rudd, Nick Jones from the Jonas Brothers. Yes, that and it is basically about a singer who sings in wedding bands and is just kind of trying to make it on this circuit. And he meets up with this singer named Danny, played of course by Nick Jonas. And the interesting part about this movie is this feels very much like, because Nick Jonas was in the Jonas Brothers and all that, and has experience in the realm of music, this almost feels like a kind of documentary on his story, and it deals a lot with music and the way that some people can interpret different songs and how they make you feel, and also the behind the scenes of songwriting and ghostwriting, and a bunch of very interesting stuff. And basically, uh, he he the Paul Rudd's character, Rick Powers, writes a song, and the person he's with, Danny, really loves the song. He's there for a wedding, and they hang out, and then he hears the song that Paul Rudd's character makes, and he likes it. And so this guy's trying to go solo, and he essentially steals the song. Very vague, gray area here, but he uses the song, and at first this doesn't bother Paul Rudd's character until he starts getting radio play, and the song becomes a really huge hit, and everybody thinks that this guy wrote his song. And it's really interesting because the movie dives into not only this concept of somebody taking out someone else's song, but what the song means between the two artists that are singing the song. And like, this guy who feels like he's failed to take off in his career, he writes this really great song, but is too scared to sing it or show it to the world because he's done a lot of writing behind the scenes. And seeing his song he created getting the fame that he thinks he should get. And he's got a family and a wife and kids and things like that. So he's kind of at a stage in his life where going on tour and doing all of these things is kind of a really big ask. You know, he's got obligations and things like that. And it's just a really great emotional movie. And I'll give it to the Jonas brother here, Nick Jonas. I have to say, he actually has some pretty good comedic timing. He's very engaging, and it almost feels like he's more playing himself than a character per se. But for this movie, it fits, because if you're gonna play somebody who's in the music business, and I mean, at this, he just might as well have played himself in this movie. Is just my personal opinion, because of just how well and how real of a person this character feels like. The interesting part about this movie and the way that I've described it, you would kind of think Nick Jonas's character would be the bad guy, or the person you're kind of rooting against because he essentially stole the song. But at the end of the day, when you find out his reasons and his motives and why he did what he did, you kind of just feel for both of these guys. And the ending is really touching. This was a very surprising film that has not been talked about a lot, which is a shame because of where it was released. But this movie was great. It came out of left field for me. I'm going to give this movie an 8. It's one of those movies that you see and you watch out of curiosity. And I think if a lot more people watched it, they will love this movie. So if you haven't checked out the movie, my number 5 with an 8 out of 10 is Power Ballad. Very good stuff. Paul Rudd is great. Nick Jonas, surprisingly, is really good. And I think if you like music, you'll definitely love this film because it deals with a lot of the minutia and ins and outs and songwriting and the creative process and what art means for some people, and, you know, how it affects our lives. And it's just really good stuff. Really good stuff. Number 4. Now, my number 4 on this list, and it's probably going to surprise a lot of you people that it's up this high, but it's something I grew up with. Jackass, the best and last. Jackass has been one of those things that I grew up with. I remember as a kid watching it faithfully on MTV. I had some videos. I went and I've seen all the movies. And this movie is so high. And this is very subjective. Just keep in mind. One, I think it's 20 times better than Scary Movie. But what makes this so great is not only is this movie it has a couple of new skits in it, but this is more of a celebration of everything that Jackass stands for and has done throughout the years. And if I had a negative, is that this movie mostly is a reflection of all of the Jackass. It has a bunch of stuff cut from their original show that was too crazy at the time, or that MTV just wouldn't let them get away with. And it also has like outtakes, and it has stuff from the previous movies and skits that they cut and things like that. There was probably the funniest gag that everybody remembers from this movie is the one with the giant hand, where they walk in to work and this fucking huge hand hits them. Now, I don't want to spoil it, but they do something kind of reminiscent, and it's fucking hilarious. And there's a part that almost got me here in the feels, where Johnny Knoxville is talking about everything that they went through and these friendships that they've had for years, and he starts getting choked up, and I'm just like sitting there, because it really feels like an end of an era. Jackass was a pioneer. It was, I can't state how important that show set up so many things that we have today that would not exist. Tom Green, Jackass, Ridiculousness. These shows kind of paved the way for, like, when you're shooting something with your friend and you guys do something ridiculous and you get hurt or things like that. They all came essentially from this crew. Jackass, in a lot of ways, pioneered that kind of a thing. And these guys have gotten so much fame and prestige and stuff off of this show, but to see them like at the age they're at now, and it's always got this vibe of when you hang out with your buddies and you do something stupid, but instead they record it and they let the rest of the world see. And you could still feel the chemistry and the love that they have. And several of them have gotten over drinking, drug issues, and Bam had his whole thing that happened with him and all the controversies that surrounded him. But at the end of the day, it's cool to see that this core group of guys have been friends since the beginning, and they've stuck it out. And I don't know, I left kind of like, wow, this is the end of a crazy era where like, I don't think we're going to get stuff like Johnny Knoxville and them are doing ever again. It's too dangerous. People copy it. The market for it isn't as prevalent as it was years ago. So my number 4 is Jackass Best and Last, and I'm going to give it an 8. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was one I wasn't expecting a lot from, and it gave me a lot more than Scary Movie did. So that's my number 4. Number 3. This one was a surprising one. Nobody's talking about this movie. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to do very well because of where it was placed. But this movie shocked the shit out of me. And I did not realize the stars that were in it until I went to watch it. But The Death of Robin Hood. Now, I'm a big Hugh Jackman whore. So when you tell me Hugh Jackman is going to be playing Robin of Locksley, I am fucking there. And let me tell you something. This movie was a movie I was not expecting to be told the way that it is. So The Death of Robin Hood stars Hugh Jackman as Robin Hood. He's aged, kind of weathered Robin Hood. And it is about the last days of Robin Hood. And it also does an interesting thing where there is the tale of Robin Hood and what the legend has been perpetuated versus what Robin Hood or what Robin of Locksley has actually done. And it's very interesting because we always see the Disney version or the most infamous version of the movie, Robin Hood, played by Kevin Costner. Fucking tremendous movie. One of my favorite Robin Hood movies. But there's still always, even when they go with the darker tone, there's always this feeling that Robin Hood is this virtuous guy, even though he is stealing. And he does kill a lot of people. Now, people brush it off and say, well, he's killing the magistrates and things like that. But there's also a bit of innocent people that he has murdered along the way. He steals. And I know it's like he steals from the rich and gives to the poor, but he's still fucking stealing. Like, there's been a mysticism created by the character. And what I like about this movie, and I know people get tired of the whole deconstructing somebody, but I think this is very well done because it's deconstructing Robin Hood and what, like, the ugly parts and the ugly shit that he's done that maybe didn't make it in the legend. The legend was, like all legends, created by the people that he saved and the things that he did. But in all actuality, there's a lot of shady shit in there that people don't talk about, right? People don't remember that part of anyone's legend. You always hear the good things, but you don't hear the village that someone's wiped out or, you know, the people they've had to murder. So in this movie, he gets summoned by his friend Little John, and they go on this mission. Things go wrong. He gets injured, and he's got to take the daughter of Little John and kind of flee. And then it's about him sort of mentoring her and becoming a better person and kind of confronting the stuff that he's done in his life while trying to shepherd this younger girl and trying to help her find her way after she lost both of her parents. There is huge stars in here. Bill Skarsgård plays Little John, does a fucking excellent job. Jodie Comer, who did one of my favorite shows, Killing Eve, and she did 28 Weeks Later, was 28 Years Later. Yeah, 28 Years Later. She's in it. She's really good. There's just a lot of different people that are in this film, and it's really, really good. It's very brutal. There is particular scene in this movie that was pretty tough to watch that kind of shows the wickedness of the people he's facing, but also too how brutal this Robin Hood is. It was just a very surprising movie. And I'm very shocked that most people will probably not see this movie. But I encourage you, if you have not seen it yet, my number three, The Death of Robin Hood, excellent film. I'm going to give this movie a 9 out of 10. It very much shocked me. The performances are all solid. And it's a very kind of dour film, but also in a way kind of touching and sentimental. So definitely check it out. Okay, so my top two films. These films were surprising to me because both of these films were not movies that were remotely on my radar, but I had seen people talking about them, so I saw them to kind of round out my list. So my number two, which surprises me, especially with how they dived into this topic, that surprisingly hasn't caused a lot of discourse. I thought for sure it would, but I'm glad it didn't because the movie handles it very well, and that is the movie Leviticus. Leviticus is a very interesting movie, and it's about uh, this kid who moves to this town, and the town is kind of this really kind of Christian. I don't want to say Christian, but it's a very, we'll say, religious based town, and he falls for this person in the town, and from there shenanigans ensue. So how can I explain this, because I really don't want to ruin it, but basically um this movie gave me a lot of vibes, and I'm sure people have made this comparison, but it reminds me a lot of It Follows. So these these two guys fall in love, and that's a no-no. So there's this faith healer or something that is in this town and does this ritual, and this ritual creates an entity that is designed to deter you from the person you love. The entity takes the form of the person you love, and if you get near it, it fucking kills you. It's not the most original premise because It Follows and a few others have done it. The interesting angle is the discussion about these like radical conversion therapies and things like that, and it kind of takes that and amplifies it with this supernatural entity that's hunting these people down that are dirty or whatever. I think where this movie got me, because when I was watching this film for the first two acts, I was just like, okay, this is kind of like the, you know, the this taking the gay community perspective and making an It Follows with it. But what was really fascinating, especially knowing people that I know who are gay and things like that, it's very intriguing to see how the material is treated, and how, especially in one particular scene, which I don't want to get into spoilers. Maybe I will have to do a little bit. Let me just do a banner here so people know what I'm talking about before. So, slight spoiler warning here, just for this part, because this really explains where this movie got me, and I thought it was great. So, this film talks about. So the main premise is the character that moved there, the family moved there because the dad died, and the mom became ultra religious and kind of discovered, found God, that whole shtick. And there's a reveal that they knew that by doing this, people had met really gruesome ends, and no one said anything. So they put their kids into the situation where, instead of just accepting them for who they are, they would rather summon this fucking entity thing. And like, it's left ambiguous whether they knew that this thing would kill the kids, or whether it was just a deterrent so to say, that went wrong. It's not really explained, but there's a scene at the ending when you realize that the mother who took her son to get, you know, clean and find Jesus and all that, she knew what the ramifications of this would be. And rather than accepting her son how he is, put this fucking curse on him instead. And I don't know why, but something really powerful, especially with the acting and everything, about that premise. And so watching it, that was, I think, the moment where I was like, holy shit, because, you know, at the end of the day, I feel like we have advanced a lot, and that some things that are brought up, people just like to scream to the internet, or they want to be heard about stuff. Everyone's intolerant to this or whatever else. But this movie was crafted in such a way that, yeah, there is some parts where it's like, okay, you're kind of hitting me over the head with what you're going for, but at the same time, I didn't find it very obnoxious or intrusive, and it really doesn't take a shot at religion per se, so it's not even like insulting on that level. It's taking a shot at people that use these things to try to fit people in a mold that they're just not comfortable with, or that they don't fit. And like, here's the thing. I have my beliefs, but I would never force that on other people. It's like, believe what you want to believe. You know, cool. To each their own. You know, that isn't my thing, but I have no issues with it. And this movie tackles how much people's hatred can really, it's like really astonishing how someone can have so much hatred that they're willing to do this really dangerous, unconventional thing because of who these people are. And the two actors that are in this story, their chemistry was pretty good. I do have issues with the way that one of the characters is portrayed, and kind of like the switch. I get what they were doing with the character, because it's supposed to signify how the character feels, like they feel dirty about doing this action. But there's a particular thing that the character does that just kind of throws the flow off, which keeps it from being my number one. But it really shocked me, because especially like as far as, I didn't know what kind of movie it was going to be going into it. So it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, guys kissing or whatever, that, you know, ugh. But it is kind of jarring. I did not see it coming. So I was like, oh, it's going to be one of these kind of movies. But I like Brokeback Mountain. I thought that was a great movie. I'm probably on a fucking hell, whatever. It did great numbers, but my point being is that was another movie I walked in that I had no clue what the movie was going to be about until the infamous tent scene. I was like, oh, okay. And so I went into this movie with no idea what the movie was about. It was just like, oh, there's a horror movie. It's got a decent poster. Let me check it out. And it was quite a ride. So Leviticus is my number 2, and I'm going to give it an 8.5. While I would like to rate it higher, and I toyed with a 9 or a 10, it's just there's certain things in the film that I just didn't jive with. And I meant from a character perspective. There's a few things that happen where the character takes a turn that I felt like just wasn't fleshed out enough, or they do something where I'm like, it's a weird roundabout way how we got here. And of course, the comparisons to It Follows. I think if It Follows didn't come out, this movie would be like what It Follows is. But unfortunately, that movie exists. And I would say that It Follows does this concept, but much better as far as scares and tensions go. There's a couple of gory scenes in this, but for the most part, like, and there was one scary moment that kind of got me. There was a jump scare that was very cleverly done. But other than that, this movie isn't really scary. It's more thought provoking. And I think this is a movie where a lot of people are going to be talking about it because of the subject matter. And in particular love how they handle the subject that they're dealing with this movie, because it's a very touchy topic and you could piss off a lot of people, especially when you bring in religion and sexual orientation. For some reason in these years, like, it creates big heated debates. For some strange reason, this has not caused any that I've seen like real big discourse. A lot of people are like in this film. And I gotta agree, like, the acting is solid, the cinematography is great. It's just, it follows exists. And this movie very much is like that. Like, even the ending is it's very much in that vein of that movie. I still think this is a good movie. It's good to see horror like kicking ass. And it's been one great horror movie after another. We also have Evil Dead Burn coming out here in July. It's just been a great time to be a horror fan. And my top 10 horror movies list is going to be a fucking nightmare, because there's so many great horror movies that even where I'm going to place them on my list is going to be a struggle. Because even if I say like, my number 10, it's like, because there's so many other great movies, it just, like, to even get a spot on my list this year is going to be fucking tough, because there's been so many great horror movies, and we're not done with the year. And I'm like, holy fucking shit, man. Horror's just come out swinging. We got Werewolf coming out by Robert Eggers. Like, there's just so much great horror. Pinocchio Unstrung, which I've been waiting for. I can't wait. That movie looks sick as hell. So yeah, this was a very surprising film. I was thoroughly pleased, and yeah, definitely like this. 8.5. And of course, my number one in this, or technically June. I am a huge fan of action movies. In particular, I love Hong Kong cinema. I have been a fan of martial arts films since like Jackie Chan's run. I remember seeing Rumble in the Bronx in the theater. What an experience, because even as a kid, there's a lot of scenes in that movie that are just fucking ridiculous. I'll never forget, there's a scene. First off, the movie is called Rumble in the Bronx. It's not shot in the Bronx at all. And secondly, there's like ridiculous scenes where like someone's playing a Game Gear with no game in it, and you can see there's no game in it, but the screen looks like it has something going. It's just like, so when you watch these movies, this isn't exactly, let's say, high art, but The Furious, my God, what a fucking display of martial arts action. This might be one of the best martial arts films to come out in the past couple of years. The stunt choreograph and the way that it is shot is absolutely fucking bananas. This movie is just crazy good fighting. I haven't had a movie like this that has wowed me since like John Wick. And the Asian market has always brought us really good films, but I feel like it's been a number of years since we've had good American-made films and action movies that have kind of pushed out the, like, as far as the foreign market's gone. There's been a lot of good foreign films, but I don't feel like none have really broken out much in the recent years. But The Furious, this is one a lot of people were talking about. I was super excited when I found out what it was. So I went to see this, and oh boy. So The Furious is a very simple premise, but and I'm probably gonna fucking butcher these names, but Z Mao plays this guy who is just a normal dude, and he teams up with this journalist to fight this criminal empire that the main bad guy or villain stole the dude's daughter. And kind of the mystery is why he took this guy's daughter, who this guy is, this supposed ordinary guy that kicks a lot of ass. And it's one of those movies where, like, the action in this movie is so fucking wild. I'm not going to do spoilers in this review. Really check out The Furious. It's a great fucking movie. But there's a scene with a crossbow, and you'll know what I mean when you see it. And it is so fucking awesome. This is one of those movies where, like, it's just from beginning to end, it just fucking goes. There's like a story for about 3 seconds, which is fine for a movie like this. Like, especially with like martial arts movies and things like that, I don't put a real high value on, let's say, a plot, because really for something like this, I feel like you just need a premise of something happens that takes our hero in the direction he needs to go. But surprisingly, there is a couple of moments in the movie that kind of tugs at your heartstrings, especially when you figure out what's going on and why the daughter got kidnapped and what the whole plot is, or the scheme. It's really fucking crazy and kind of heartbreaking, because it deals with a particular thing that is a problem, especially in the Asian regions, and for that, a lot of other regions. There's a lot of things, but with trafficking and things like that. And it's really clever how they integrate this journalist who's helping our guy try to find his daughter, and their whole dynamic. And then there's also too a cop that's introduced in this, who's a fucking badass. And so it's like all of these like really bombastic characters. The villain in this movie is just super fucking ridiculous, and I love it. This feels like those old school Hong Kong movies where you have that really over the top villain, where I don't know what it is, but if you've ever watched martial arts movies, it's always from like the opening scene. You always know who the villain is because they do the most outlandish fucking thing, or they look absolutely ridiculous and they do like a maniacal evil thing. And you're like, oh yeah, okay, so that's a bad guy, especially like in Bruce Lee movies and stuff. I don't know how many people have watched them, but in particular, Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan movies and things like that, they always have these really quirky but like memorable villains, and they'd probably be goofy today, but as a kid, you always had like, I had this wonderment, like, wow, how is Bruce going to get out of this? Like, Fists of Fury and all those ones. It was, or Death Game and things like that. But this brought me back to that feeling. Like, the dude in this movie is whoever plays the villain, he is fucking amazing. But in particular, the leader of this syndicate is one of the most entertaining villains I've seen put to screen in quite some time. This person does some heinous shit. And just a warning, this movie deals with human trafficking. So there's a lot of like pretty brutal stuff when it comes to that world. But he's a very intriguing villain because it's a villain that you love to hate. And what I mean by that is he does very disgusting shit in this movie. But the actor is so charismatic playing this villain that even though I was uncomfortable, there's a couple of scenes and things that the villain says that made me fucking chuckle. And you feel so dirty for laughing because this guy's essentially a smuggling rapist piece of shit that very much deserves to die. But it's very interesting where you could get an actor who has this charisma about them where you can still hate the villain but like the performance, and the performance is so wacky and out there that you kind of wind up liking the character. And I think it helps, especially because he's the central villain. So you need a good hero. Now, the person who plays our hero is the typical silent protagonist. He is a mute tradesman. And of course, he has a mysterious past. More gets revealed about why he's such a badass and why he doesn't talk. But it felt like the old school, the strong, silent type who comes into town and just wants to live his life, and maybe he's got a daughter. It's always like the dude's got a daughter or a dog or something, and the villains come and just fuck with them, and that kind of kicks off everything. And this movie is very much that. Like, this movie is not reinventing the wheel on the premise that it's going for. It's a very simple premise to get you locked into the action. But my God, the action in this movie is fucking insane. The shit that they do in this film is absolutely just fucking nuts. And this movie was made for $20 million. The shit that they do in this film made me like question. I did not know what the budget was for this movie before I did this video, but watching it, I was like, the shit they did with $20 million, it astonishes me that you have a movie like Supergirl or you have Masters of the Universe or things like that, which are big budget movies that are going to lose a shit ton of money. And then you have like Backrooms, Obsessions, The Furious, these movies that have these really low budgets or lower than what seems to be the norm in Hollywood today. I mean, we're talking about 10, 20 million dollar budgets, and these movies turn out to be so much better because I think it's the feeling of that they only have a certain amount of money. So where the money is going, they really have to nail it. And it's not the case with every small budgeted movie. Like I talked about on the bottom here, Strung was probably a clearly lower budgeted film because it was on Peacock, but it didn't do much with the story. So in reverse of that, The Furious takes its budget and clearly puts it towards the action. And how the fuck they did some of the stuff they did on that budget, I have no clue. There's fights in traffic. There's like a ton of like raid style fights like in these buildings and things like that. There is so much brutal violence in this movie. Like the brutality of this movie is fucking insane. This is just such a fun movie that I truly enjoyed, and it shocked me. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if so far this is my number one movie in my top 10 movies of this year, because as you guys know, I do a top 10 horror list, because if I didn't, horror would be dominating my top 10 list. But for my top 10 movies, like blockbusters, I put my action comedy and things in that list. This is probably at the top of my list right now. This is the kind of movie that makes me glad that I love the action genre. And I'm giving this movie this is super tough because John Wick, when it came out, John Wick 2, I think I gave a 9 or a 10. And 3 I gave a 9. I am going with a 9 with this, and it's because the one thing that I think with this movie that would have made it like a perfect masterpiece for me is if the plot didn't just feel like it was there to drive the story. And what I mean by that is the overall him getting his daughter back and the emotional beats, they're good, but there's a few characters that are introduced that are badass that I feel like they don't really go into. And the world itself is very interesting and fascinating, but it's not explored as much as I would like. You get enough of an idea to know who's the bad guy, who's the good guy. This place is connected to this place and what they do and their dealings and things like that. But the world to me didn't feel as alive as I would have liked it. And the premise is super fucking simple. And a lot of action movies have proved you can have a bit of a story and still have action. And I think for me, the best template of that is the John Wick series. The super fucking simple premise. His car gets stolen, his dog gets killed, goes for revenge. But the way they build the world out and they make a mystery is what makes that original film so great, because you're kind of told about John Wick being a badass and shown how much of a badass he is, but also they kind of introduce you to this very fascinating world. And as you get into 2 and 3, they expand on the world that John belongs to. But here, I didn't feel like I was very intrigued by the rest of this world. It just kind of feels like, oh yeah, if I went here, that's probably what trafficking and all this stuff is like. Like, there's nothing that intrigues me. And the main character is really interesting, but they just give you enough to kind of know his motivations or whatever, but not enough to really flesh out the character, which is a shame, because the guy who is acting the character out does a really great job. And I am super bad with Chinese names, but Zimao does a really great job as this mute protagonist who has to express a lot because he doesn't talk, through like his facial acting and the way, kind of the looks and the things that he gives to communicate. Like, the actor does a great job. The thing is, I don't get enough about the character, and I really don't get enough about the world, which keeps it from being in that top echelon, but still very much a great movie. I will watch this again. I'm probably own this movie. And it is a strong 9 out of 10. This was one of the movies I was not expecting to be the top of this month, because I saw Lemon. And it's one of those weird things where I was most excited about my bottom movies. And these movies that were at the top were not movies that were either on my radar or I was even thinking about. So my number 1 is The Furious at a 9. So let's go, and I'll do a quick recap so you guys know where everything is. But my number 11 was Scary Movie with a 5. My number 10 is Supergirl with a 6. My number 9 is Disclosure Day with a 7. My number 8 is Strung with a 7. My number 7 is The Sheep Detective with a 7. My number 6 is The Masters of the Universe with a 7. So most of these are like aggressively 7 or 6. I think Scary Movie was my worst one, but my number 5 is Power Ballad with an 8. My number 4 is Jackass Best to Last with an 8.5. My number 3 is The Death of Robin Hood with an 8. My number 2 is Leviticus with an 8. And my number 1 is The Furious with a 9. All in all, this has been a really good year for movies. I want to get back to doing individual reviews. It's just when movies drop and when I have the time to see them, it's tough to kind of like get. Plus, I'm watching a lot of shows. I'm also going to be doing my top 10 shows of 2026. I did one in 2025, and it's kind of a new thing I started. But for me, TV has been a lot more crazy. I just am finishing up Widow's Bay, which has been really great. The new season of From was spectacular. We've had a lot of different shows that have been really good this year. Dutton Ranch is also really good. I got to catch up on Marshall's because I heard that it gets better. I kind of dropped that show. But there's a lot of shows, a ton of movies coming out. And it's just been a really interesting year because last year, and I said it myself, I felt like last year horror had a lot of bangers. But as far as just like blockbuster movies or comedies and stuff, it was a terrible year last year. This year is kind of the opposite, where it feels like everything is coming out. We've got the Supergirl movie, the new Batman film, I believe, hopefully is coming out this year. We've got Avengers Doomsday, Spider-Man Brand New Day. Like, there's a lot of big hitters. Toy Story 5 apparently is doing really good. The new Minions movie, things like that. So it's been a very interesting year for these different movies, and I think we're kind of in a year it's going to be super tough, especially on the horror side of things, for me to rank movies, which is great. I like years where there's so much good content that it's really hard, and then you have other years where there's just nothing, and you got those gems that come out, but either movies are so far out or they're 2 and 3 years away from being released. And then you have a year like this where it feels like everything's being released at the same exact fucking time. And so it makes it really tough to watch everything, review it, do a list, things like that. So if you guys like this video, let me know. Also, too, let me know what movies you saw that maybe I didn't catch or what you're interested in me talking about. And I plan on doing these lists at the end of the month to just kind of round out all of the things I saw, and then make one video, kind of review them all, and then lead into the end of the year list, because it's just easier for me to do it this way and kind of lay out my thoughts as I feel. And, I don't write a script for any of this. It's just like my raw feelings on the movie in general. But doing writing and seeing a ton of movies throughout the years and things like that, it's very difficult for me to even like stuff like Supergirl. Not a bad movie, but it's just like I watch so many movies that an average movie, especially in the market the way that the theaters are, is just it's just not enough. It's not like back in the day where people have so much income to just see all of this stuff, and people are being really selective, and it sucks because there's so many good movies that won't get play because they have either come out at the wrong time or the marketing is not very good or whatever the case may be. Like, I think, quite honestly, the Masters of the Universe has gotten the biggest shaft this month. I think if this was released maybe later or more towards Supergirl, it could have probably done better. But because it was released like after Backrooms and Obsession, it just got fucking demolished. And then you had this weird thing where like you have Masters of the Universe and Supergirl, which are two big blockbuster tentpoles, and we could even put Scary Movie in that all release together, and they take each other's box office, to where the movies that were made with so much money just aren't going to recoup that cost. Scary Movie made back its budget and did really well. So unfortunately, we're going to get another one that'll probably be just good enough to justify a sequel. But that was made for a super fucking low budget. Whereas Supergirl, Disclosure Day, Masters of the Universe, these kinds of movies are made with these really big budgets. And I think when you release them is super crucial, because the public can only do one blockbuster film at a time. And especially when you have things like Toy Story 5 and the Minions and Monsters come out and things like that. Well, then the audience you would have for that big blockbuster film, or the fans from that, or even the parents who might take their kids to see a new He-Man movie because they grew up with it, or whatever the case is, those aren't going to do that well because there's so many other movies that people are more interested in. Like, say what you want to, but Toy Story 5 is on like its 5th entry, and people are loving it. And that movie's doing stupid good money. A lot of people are going to go see Minions as well, because it's just one of those things. Those movies are going to make money. So when you release other films next to those movies that specifically target the family demographic, they lose out on that audience. And there's been a weird release structure for these movies where they put all of these movies back to back. And unlike back in the day, they cannibalize each other's box office. So you're seeing all of these movies that should be making decent money or at least doing good, and they're getting fucking buried because they're around other movies that are just blowing them out of the water. And it's crazy. What really is crazy to me about this year is you have two 20-something-year-old filmmakers, first movies that they've done as far as like box office movies, both in their 20s, both horror, both movies fucking killed it. And the irony is they're both R-rated, and neither of them took really from each other's box office. It's nuts to me. And then you've got a movie like Supergirl or Masters of the Universe and things like that that are backed by these big studios that are $200 million fucking projects that aren't going to make anywhere near their money. I think Supergirl is set to lose 150 million or something fucking stupid, crazy amount. And very much so. It's an aggressively average film. Like, it baffles my mind because there's only one, most people don't know, and a little bit of lore here, okay? But in the Superman universe, and this is not a sexist comment, this is just a real thing, Supergirl has never done really well as far as comic book sales. And she does have a movie. There is a Supergirl movie out there. I've seen it. It was made in 1985, 86. It came out after the Christopher Reeve Superman when they were trying to cash in on the Superman thing. So they made a Supergirl film. Oh boy, that movie is fucking fascinating. It is super bad, but honestly, it's very enjoyable. It's one of those movies that kind of falls into the Room kind of category where it's so bad it becomes entertaining. And it's a movie that did not follow the comics at all. The plot and the premise makes no fucking sense whatsoever. So now skip ahead, and the Supergirl movie is supposed to be after the comic The Woman of Tomorrow. And it's a great comic book. If you haven't read it, I actually suggest comic over the movie. But it astonishes me that these lower budget movies are just absolutely positively just crushing these really big films. And I think the smartest thing that I've seen Marvel do is them holding back their movie like Spider-Man Brand New Day and Avengers Doomsday and kind of releasing them later out. I think that was a great, I don't know if that was exactly planned by the marketing team or whatever else, but I think it was a brilliant move because where Brand New Day is and Doomsday, one, they won't bump into each other, and two, they're in a slot where there's not very many like huge movies coming out to rival them. And if there's one thing I can give Marvel, it's that they've always been good at where they place things. And they've only ever competed with something if they thought they could beat it, which back in the day, you could put a Marvel movie anywhere and even studios would have cleared. But I think because Marvel has been in a decline, movies have become more bold releasing around there. So it's very interesting to see them kind of place it to where they're not bumping into anything. And to me, I think Spider-Man Brand New Day and Avengers Doomsday is going to do much better, especially Avengers Doomsday. I think people are grossly underestimating how many fucking people are going to see that movie. I'm not particularly excited about it. I've said it several times. I'm not really too interested. I haven't really cared about the MCU's phase. I think it's been so up and down, and there's been so many of the Marvel stuff that's just been average to just shit. So there's not a big buildup to Doomsday that there was for like Endgame and Infinity War. There's not as much momentum. That being said, all of the cameos and stuff like that do intrigue me, but I think it's going to be a messy movie. Whereas Spider-Man Brand New Day, I am actually very interested in seeing. It is one of my anticipated movies, and I think it's going to fucking make an ignorant amount of money. because Spider-Man just can't fail. Spider-Man Noir was fucking fantastic. You can see my channel under my live streams. We did a watch along for the whole series. But Spider-Man has always been on a hot streak for fucking years. I can't think of a bad Spider-Man film except for maybe Spider-Man 3. And to be honest with you, people have kind of warmed up to it over the years. I remember when Spider-Man 3 came out and people fucking hated the movie. And then it got the memes and the infamous scene with Tobey Maguire dancing, coming out of the coffee shop with his fucking ridiculously slick black hair, which was clearly fucking dyed. Oh my God. But it's so charming. So for me, Spider-Man has never made a bad movie as far as I can remember, back to the first Spider-Mans with Tobey Maguire that really propelled the character into the mainstream. And even though I'm not a fan of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, I have never really been a fan of just Tom Holland in general. The last Spider-Man movie, what was it? Homecoming? Not Homecoming. Far From Home. What was the last one? Far From Home, Homecoming. I think it might be Spider-Man Homecoming or Far From Home. The one with all those villains that get together and all get sucked in porn. The last Spider-Man movie. That's my point. The last Spider-Man movie was fucking epic. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Seen it several times. And so Brand New Day is where and what I wanted to see Tom Holland play. Tom Holland's Spider-Man has been very jovial, and he does get that early Spider-Man feeling. But what I really missed is the Tobey Maguire era where Spider-Man's just kind of poor and he can't be with the girl that he loves. And I think Spider-Man hits with people because he's one of the most relatable heroes where he works a 9 to 5. He saves people and does not get fucking credit. So he's not getting paid for saving people. So he's quite poor. And I think a lot of people gravitate towards that. Like, he works a 9 to 5 and he gets fired from these jobs because of being a superhero. So, and there's always been something that attracts people to that. And Batman, for some strange reason, like Batman and Spider-Man, whenever they come out, they always do fucking phenomenal. And so I think that Spider-Man Brand New Day is going to be one of the first superhero movies this year to be in the billions. I honestly think I would be shocked if it does not crack $1 billion. That's just a bold prediction. The hype around the movie is real. I heard some crazy thing like the pre-sales for the tickets is already astronomically high. And once again, we can't go by pre-sales. That, to me, that's all bullshit because what really counts is opening day. Like half of those people pre-order tickets, fucking forget about it, or they won't go, or they'll be like, I'll go and see it next week or something like that. So really what's going to be interesting is what the movie does. And I think the movie's going to do stupid fucking money. Now, Avengers, on the other hand, that's going to be very interesting to see because for me, Avengers did not have the same momentum that the build-up for the other movies did. But that first Avengers movie, well, it did have a lot of build-up too, but it felt like an event where Avengers Doomsday does not feel like an event. It feels like a desperate way to get things back on track. And it's going to be really interesting to see where the movie leaves off, to see what the future of the MCU is going to look like, because right now it's kind of chaotic and all over the place. So anyways, those are my top movies. Go see The Furious if you haven't, or get it on VOD or whatever else. That's my top movie for June. What a fucking surprise. And I got to be honest with you, July is going to be equally insane. I will have a review up when Evil Dead Burn comes out, because if you guys don't know, I'm a huge Evil Dead fan. I will be seeing that. I'm probably going to see if I can see the preview showing for it. But that's one of, if not the most anticipated horror movie I've had on this list. The trailer looks fucking insane. The early reviews are saying it is, it's what you expect from Evil Dead. There's gross shit, and, demons and all that shit. So I really love the Evil Dead franchise. So, anyways, that's my movies for June. Thank you guys for watching. Hit the like, share, subscribe, hype, all that bullshit. And as always, remember, there is only one rule here in the Phantom Zone: kneel before General Zod.